Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Cricket Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the upcoming England versus Pakistan series, in particular the ODI series. And joining me is our resident England expert, Nick. And of course, as always, I am Azza.
How's it going, Azza? Yeah, we've had a little bit of a reshuffle of what we're thinking about 5 hours before we're recording this podcast. A couple of the England boys are having brushes with COVID, and the staff as well. Players are having to isolate. We hope they're okay and they stay safe. But looking forward to a good series. I think a lot of good, interesting talent on offer from both sides. We're going to see some debutants from England, certainly, but Pakistan's also going to be a really exciting prospect. I think they've got players coming from the PSL who are in really good form. Some recalls there, players who've had 5 year gaps,
Yeah,
between their two Pakistan international games. Some young talent, some established talent. Um, the weather hopefully will hold true. It's been a little bit dicey the last couple of weeks, as we all know, watching the World Test Championship. It's
yeah.
carried on into Wimbledon and the tennis. Um, but, you know, I think all in all, this is going to be a really exciting series. I think the England showed their strength against Sri Lanka, but let's see what Pakistan brings to the table. I think it's a very different prospect playing against Pakistan as a
Well, it's a different prospect playing against Pakistan. It's a completely different England side as well. Not a single player is going to be the same. So, I've been
yep.
thinking about this series in particular in the last 5 hours, as you mentioned. As from a fantasy perspective, how interesting is this going to be, Nick? We're going to have to be picking players that we don't know much about, and I think the job that we have on hand now is to educate the listeners as much as we can before going into the first few matches about who are these young English players, or some of them not so young even, who you should be looking out for. What have they got in store for us?
Yeah, and I think that's key, right? There are a lot of unknowns as far as the England squad are concerned, um, and I think before we delve into that, everybody likes their comforts, their little bit of security.
Hmm.
So let's have a look at perhaps starting with Pakistan. Azza, why don't you give me one or two absolute stalwarts, their names that you're going to pick, their names that
Yeah.
are known to our audience. I understand most people are going to be more aware of the Pakistan squad than they are of the England squad. So
Certainly.
we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah. And so the Pakistan side so far is a full strength side, and you're looking at the big names. So let's start with the wicket keeper. They have two wicket keepers in the squad, Mohammad Rizwan and Sarfraz Ahmad. Now Sarfraz has got a recall to the national side, but I'm not sure he'll be playing. Mohammad Rizwan, on the other hand, most definitely will be playing. He's in terrific form, coming from the PSL. Even before that, international cricket, he's been on fire in the last year. So Mohammad Rizwan, you've got to pick him as your wicketkeeper. Even if you don't pick another England wicketkeeper, I think the one wicketkeeper you should pick in your fantasy team is Rizwan. Then looking at the batsmen, there's a lot of combinations that Pakistan can go with, but their star batsman is obviously Babar Azam. Now Babar is a little bit expensive, all things considered. I'm looking at some of the apps. He's going for about 10.5 credits. But Nick, I think he's absolutely worth it. He's played in England before. He's a one-day superstar. He's in Test cricket. He's still finding his feet a little bit, but in one-day cricket, he's absolutely one of the best batsmen around. So 10.5 credits, I'll take him, no problem. Now let's get to the all-rounders quickly. Here it gets a little bit interesting, Nick, because they have some interesting choices, and keep in mind that England also have a few all-rounders. So do you want to pick a Pakistani all-rounder at all? And if you do want to pick one, you have a choice between Fahim Ashraf, Shadab Khan. Now Shadab Khan, of course, will be playing because he's vice captain. He's also a very cheap buy. He's 8.5 credits. And I'm seeing that already he's been he's been picked by about 55% of the fantasy players. So I'd be interested. He's a spinner, so I'm not sure if you want to pick him. Fahim Ashraf, on the other hand, he can hit some big boundaries, and giving that pace, that it's going to be friendly conditions for him, it can be an interesting pick. But finally, coming to the bowlers, I'm looking at Shayne Shaw, Afridi, Nik. He's again a limited over specialist. He's terrific, and you have to pick him. 9 credits. It's again, you have to pick him.
All right, Azza, you went a little bit enthusiastic with what I thought. I thought we were just going to start with a couple of them, but you've given us a real good example of 4 players I think that are very established. They're good players. Their records speak for themselves, and the reasoning speaks for themselves. I mean,
Yeah,
I think players like you've mentioned, you almost can't be worried about how much they cost.
yeah,
These are potentially must picks. I want to touch on 2 things you mentioned. One, with regards to your all rounder pick, you said you don't know. If you're going for one all rounder, you don't know whether you pick an England all rounder or a Pakistan all rounder. Well, I'm here to tell you, you pick the England all rounder if you're only picking one all rounder, because that England all rounder is the best all rounder in the world, and that's Ben
so you're
Stokes.
picking Ben Stokes. Are
100%.
you
I mean, he is by far the best all rounder in the world.
are
Okay,
you
he's
at all
coming back off an
considered?
injury.
Yes. Are you concerned about that at all?
No, I'm not. I'm not. He's the kind of player, as we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, in particular, both in one-day cricket and Test cricket, who thrives with responsibility, thrives under pressure. He's
Yeah.
captaining a young side. He's the kind of player that will rise to the occasion. He's too good a player. You don't win Wisden Cricketer of the Year
Yes.
2 years in a row if you don't have something going for you.
I'd
So
like to
from a
point
fantasy
out,
point of view,
yeah, yeah, I'd like to point out anecdotally, if I may, Ben Stokes. I remember him in that Test tour of India, being the second pace bowler in the final Test match in Ahmedabad, and he really bowled his heart out. I mean, he was on the pitch at times, just flat out, and that just shows that when you give him responsibility, he's going to take it full heartedly. So I completely
all
support
right,
you there,
calm,
Nick.
calm, calm down, Azza. I'm the one talking about England. You can't start waxing on
All right,
taking
fair
my
enough,
taking my role.
fair enough.
But no, that's a very good point. I think realistically as well with Ben Stokes is, from a fantasy point of view, is he's one of the only players in world cricket who is a genuine all rounder.
Mm.
He is equally a threat with bat and with ball. And if we think back to our insights episodes where we talk about the point scoring system, he's also a fantastic fielder. So he's going to pick up points for you in the field.
Yep.
So for me, Ben Stokes is the absolute 100% shout if you're picking one all rounder. Before I go into 1 or 2 established English players, I'm not picking an English wicketkeeper because from what I can see, looking at this sort of makeshift squad, got John Simpson coming in. Not many people know a lot about him. I don't know too much about him either. Going off his recent form, he's gone through a pretty poor run of form. He hasn't shown anything domestically in the last month that would merit picking him over the likes of Mohammad Rizwan, for example.
How about
or,
Ben Duckett or Phil Salts, who are also listed as wicket keepers on these apps?
So it's interesting to see what England decide to do. Their one-day approach is very different, as we know from their Test approach. Results show that more than anything else. But they tend to pick players that can bat, and if they can keep wicket, that's beneficial. I like the idea of Ben Duckett. He is a player that I've got to as a player to watch. He's had a pretty decent last couple of games before being drafted into the England squad.
So that you're referring to the English T20 blast there.
To the T20 blast, the Vitality blast they've got going on in England at the moment. I think Ben Duckett is a is a cracking player. I think he's a really exciting player. Um, it just, if he comes in as a keeper, that's probably a good shout. Shows how much I know about England clearly, because I wasn't sure whether he's going to keep, but that does help out. I still don't pick Ben Duckett though, as
Right.
in terms of a balance. I think a Johnny Bairstow or a Joss Butler, and then I'm looking at picking a wicket keeper from each country. But at the moment, I don't see there being
Certainly.
enough talent to warrant.
Rizwan is certainly
Um,
miles ahead, you know.
I think Rizwan is miles ahead. I think Rizwan is miles ahead. Okay, he will cost you more points than Ben Duckett,
It's only point 0.5
but
points.
well, you see, there you go. That's
Yeah.
that's that's 0.5 is not enough to sacrifice Rizwan, given his form, given his pedigree.
Yeah.
Not to say that Ben Duckett can't come out and have an absolute stellar performance, but I've also would like to point out that Ben Duckett, his forms come in T20 cricket.
True.
It's a leap from T20 domestic T20 cricket to one day international cricket.
Yeah.
But one England player that I really want people to watch out for,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he really, personally, he's excited me for quite a little while, is Saqib Mahmood. He's going to be a really exciting watch.
Yeah.
Pakistani roots, which probably explain why he's a fast bowler. Another one of the line of potentially great Pakistani fast bowlers. Although he's turning out for England, he's had some really good performances in T20 and first class cricket building up to it. He's had some one day international experience, and I think if personally I were to play a game against India, for example, or if I was playing for India against England, I'd be really, really hyped
Yeah.
up for the occasion. And I think he's playing
Certainly.
against Pakistan. He's going to have that extra zip.
Yeah.
He's going to get you fantasy points. He's an
Keep in
attacking
mind,
bowler. He's going to get you those wickets.
definitely, and keep in mind, he's coming off the PSL as well. He's got experience there
Yep.
playing with the same boys.
He knows these guys. He'll have played
Yeah.
against them. He'll played with them,
Exactly.
and I think for me, Saqib Mahmood is one of the must picks.
Nice one. That's interesting. I mean, of course, I knew about Saqib Mahmood, but it's good to know that you also back him.
Yeah, and I think really, if we're not diving into England picks so much this episode, just because the squad is completely different. We're not really sure until the first ODI how they're going
Yeah.
to pick the balance of the side. But I think players like Ben Stokes are definitely going to be playing. I think Saqib Mahmood will definitely be playing.
So how about the
Um,
batsman then, Nick? You're saying that we don't know but
so
they have some
I
established guys
think
there.
I think David Malan is 100% playing.
Yeah.
I think he's justified his position anyways. Best T20 player in the world at the moment, or batsman at least.
According to the
Back that
ICC
up with
rankings.
according to the ICC rankings, passes the eye test for the most part as well. If you're watching cricket properly, Azza, clearly you're not. But no, he's had a good performance. His last T20 innings, he scored a 76 against Sri Lanka, but he played that sort of anchor role that Joe Root plays in the one day side. So I think
Yeah.
he can step in and play that role. And that's something you have to consider from a fantasy point of view.
Right.
He'll get you runs. He may not,
Great. So Nick, I think what we've done now is we've covered about 2 to 3 English players, more Pakistani players because I went on for a bit longer than you, didn't I?
Yeah.
But now let's just get into the batsmen quickly. So we've said Babar Azam, David Malan, and we're both saying you've got to pick them. But there are other
Yep.
batsmen from the Pakistani side, much more established. So I'm looking at someone like Fakhar Zaman, Imamul Haq. Haris Sohail, I don't know if he'll play because there's also a Sohaib Maqsood who's coming off an absolutely incredible Pakistan Super League.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
so it's difficult really, but Fakhar Zaman has been in prime ODI form preceding the PSL as well. So I'm very tempted to pick him. Imam ul Haq, I don't know. He's not been playing as much cricket, not been in as good form. So I'd rather go for Sohaib Masood because he's also costing you only 8.5 credits. But then Nick,
Yep,
who are you
that's a
looking
good
at
shot.
for apart from Malan for potential
So
English batsmen?
for potential English batsmen, Zach Crawley. Well,
Hmm.
they're not wearing the color white, so I think he might be okay playing this game because or this series. He's been really poor.
Yeah,
Um, n- Not just in international, you know, test crickets, but he's also been really poor in first class cricket. He's been
yeah,
really good recently, though. His numbers are looking really good for Kent in the T20. Kent's obviously a team, not my team, but a team close to my heart. Spent a lot of time at that ground. Um, they've, he's performed well. I think Zach Crawley will come in, and as I think considerations for people who are picking a fantasy team is to look at players like Dan Lawrence, players like Zach Crawley,
yeah,
who may have not done very well when they watch them playing against India, for example, in the Test series, but to understand that with so many changes in the squad, there will be a certain amount of selection based on previous experience, whatever
yeah.
that may be.
And by default,
And I
these
think that
guys, they're so young, but they become the senior members of the squad suddenly.
exactly. So for me, the batsman to look for really is I'm looking at David Milan for sure. I'm looking at Zach Crawley. Those are the two
Right,
main batsmen I'm looking at. There
right.
are other names, of course,
Yeah,
um, names that I think would be useful to look at. Perhaps Ben Duckett. He's worth putting in your squad. Not if you're going to risk having Rizwan, but that's my look at the batsman. I don't want to commit too much on the batsman just because not really sure which direction England will take. Uh, All rounder I've already touched upon. It's got to be Ben Stokes, and
yeah.
my main bowler really to watch is Saqib Mahmood. Potentially looking at another name just to cap it off before we round off this session, at least from an England point of view, is another South African import. You know, it's it would feel strange to have an England side which doesn't have a South African import. So
True.
it's good to see that there's one in the squad, and that's Bryden Cars.
Hmm.
Carsey. Apologies in advance if I've pronounced his name wrong. But I've watched a little bit of him, uh, and he's quick. He's really quick. Uh, he seems like a natural replacement for Mark Wood in terms of raw pace.
Right.
Not to say that Saqib Mahmood can't get up there, but it's England like to have raw pace in their lineup, and I think someone like him might have a shot.
That's interesting.
But that's really it. As if I can quickly just I am sort of hogging the conversation for the last couple of minutes, but I'm just going to summarize um, my perspective from an England point of view. You're going to be a little bit cautious. I wouldn't, at least for the first ODI, sacrifice Pakistani players for England players.
Hmm.
I would go for more of the Pakistani players, with the
Yeah.
exception of Ben Stokes, David Malan, Saqib Mahmood for sure. Potentially looking at also adding in Zach Crawley and even Bryden Cars.
So,
But
so I'm also
that's how
looking
I
at
see it.
another English player who is Lewis Gregory. Now, he's mostly a batting all rounder, but in the T20 blast in the last 15 days or so, he's been picking up a lot of wickets. So just keep that in mind. So he picked up a 5 for on the 1st of July. On the 28th of June, he got a 4 for, a 3 for on the 25th of June. That's already like 13 wickets.
You see, Azza, he's got pedigree. I didn't mention him, and he's played well. He's in form. He's played recently. In fact,
Yeah,
his last T20 international was against Pakistan last year. He's been in the squad.
yeah.
I My concern is that as an all rounder, you're going to have to choose potentially whether you pick him versus Ben Stokes. That's that's why I don't bring him up. He's a consideration, and if you want to pack your team with all rounders from both sides, and you're looking for a second England pick, look at Lewis Gregory. Otherwise, your English all rounder has to be Ben Stokes, and I would captain Ben Stokes as well. By the way,
Yeah, so let's get to the captain then. So you're captaining Ben Stokes. Who are you vice captaining then?
I'm vice captaining. I think I'm going to vice captain Rizwan.
Okay.
He's had a really good PSL.
So
I'm
wicket
really
keeper.
impressed with him. Yeah. He gets you the wicket keeping points. I think with Pakistani bowlers have always done really well in English conditions.
Yeah.
I think Shaheen Afridi is going to toss up a few caught behinds at least.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my pick. Captain Ben Stokes, vice captain Mohammad Rizwan.
That's fine because I'm going for exactly the same picks. I might look at vice captaining Babar Azam instead, but I'll have more of a think about that. And by that, I also infer that the listeners should have a think about that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I know this has been a pretty long episode, but this really is going to serve as a guide for the next 3 ODIs. Obviously, some of the information will be more relevant once the first ODI is done. And just bear in mind, right, Azza, that we're sort of figuring out some of these players as well.
Exactly.
Certainly from the English county side.
Yeah, and we're just trying to give the listeners a more nuanced perspective that we might have.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's an exciting opportunity for these young players. They're going to be eager to prove themselves. Hopefully, England beat Denmark tomorrow really quickly, so that the players can go to bed nice and early, have a good rest before the game tomorrow.
True that.
But let's see. It's exciting. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to this series. I'm looking forward to the feedback that we're going to get from our listeners. I hope that they make some gains. I'm looking forward to beating you finally in a fantasy battle.
You might have the edge.
Finally, finally got the edge for a change. And thanks for another great chat, Azza.
Thanks, Nick. And I'd encourage the listeners to get involved and let us know if this helps you. If it doesn't, give us some feedback. We're open to all of it.
Yep, exactly. Make sure like, comment, subscribe, Patreon, follow us on socials. Even if it's just to tell me that I talk too much, or Azza that he talks too much and he knows nothing. We're happy to hear any kind of feedback.
True. Less happy for some than others. But that said, great, Nick. Look forward to playing this series with you. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds great, Azza. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Take care,
Thanks.
everyone.
Cheers.